Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at our fourth and final scheduled screening of our film, Where Do Black Men Live? Before we begin, I want to extend my deep thanks to our funders, without whom this film and this event and the previous three events would not be possible. They are Ben & Jerry's Foundation, Borealis Philanthropies Black-Led Movement Fund, Borealis's Communities Transforming Policing Fund, Haymarket People's Fund, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Massachusetts Humanities Council, New England War Tax Resistance, the Navigation Fund, Hunter College, and Goldsmiths University of London. And a very special thanks to our event sponsors. Yay! Asian American Resource Workshop, Black Alliance for Peace, Cambridge Community Television, Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, Cambridge Residents Alliance, Defund Somerville Police Department, Democracy on the Front Lines Fund, Jewish Voice for Peace, the NAACP Mystic Valley Branch, Working Films, Surge Boston, the Prison Abolition in Camberville, and the Cambridge Community Land Trust. Okay, so the stories in this film take place in what is now known as Cambridge, Massachusetts, the stolen land of the Massachusetts and Wampanoag people. So on behalf of the Black Response, I pay respect to their past, present, and emerging leaders. In the words of the Narragansett people, aho. My name is Stephanie Garand. I'm a core team member of the Black Response. It's really important to say that I was born in Haiti and raised here in Cambridge as an undocumented child in a mixed status household. As a child, our family experienced homelessness and income insecurity. My family found refuge in public housing. These formative experiences shaped my commitment to justice, especially housing justice. Supported by a generous private fellowship, I pursued a graduate degree at Goldsmiths University of London. My primary research question was, where do Black men live? That question became more urgent in the wake of COVID-19, this era of mass incarceration, the racial uprisings of 2020 following the police murder of George Floyd. May he rest in power. Using an abolitionist framework, that is prison industrial complex abolition, I explored how policy deliberately creates housing precarity for low-income African-descended men. This case study was conducted in Cambridge between 2021 and 2022, at the time when the community was exploring what it would mean for us to have a different form of public safety. During this time, I emerged both as an activist and as a scholar. As a member of the Black Response and a co-founder of the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, I conducted 41 interviews with African-descended men in Cambridge. And we gathered, with the support of the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, gathered data linking policing and housing insecurity. This work informed local advocacy through the Black Response and the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition, including the efforts to establish the municipal voucher program, which was successful, and the creation of a community land trust, now the Cambridge Community Land Trust. Though I am not a Black man, I am connected to Black men through love, family, friendship, and community. This project was built on care, not extraction. Inspired by Linda Tuhiwa Smith's call to return stories to communities in an accessible, non-alienating way. This is the objective of this project. With the support of many collaborators from the Black Response and other community members, but especially my core team members, Virginia, Lorenzo, Andy, Ilham, Mozo, Symphony, Rayanne, Barbara, and very special thanks to former core team members, Dara, Ayana, Queen Cheyenne. We created this film as a gift to give these stories back to the community. Where Do Black Men Live was co-written by myself, Gift Tapiwa Maravatsanga, and Joy Wrolson, and directed by my very good friend, Corinne Spencer. It follows the tradition of a verbatim theater, using anonymized words, but from real interviews. So these are the words of the men themselves. And so now, without further ado, we present the film, Where Do Black Men Live? Thank you. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the film. It was a labor of love, and we're incredibly excited to share it with you guys. This is the opportunity, I think, for everyone to come meet the rest of the creative team. So I'll invite Corey, Gift, Joy, Virginia to join us. Really excited to talk to you guys about this. We already have some questions. If you have questions, go ahead and throw your questions in the Q&A, and feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask your question. But be mindful that this is being recorded, so just keep that in mind. All right, hi guys. Uh,
Hi.
Yay, good to see you guys. This is so great bringing the gang back together. Um, I think maybe we should just go around and introduce ourselves. Corey, do you want to get us started? Maybe your name, your role in the film, anything else you want to share?
Sure. My name is Corinne Spencer. I was the director of the film. I also worked in producing the film and I edited the project. And I'm super happy to be here with everybody today. I'll pass it to Virginia.
Strange. I think Virginia's having a sound problem, so go ahead, Gift.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Gift Tapiwa Maravatsanga. I had the privilege of working as a co-author on the project, also co-directed with Joy, working with the actors, and did a little bit of music for the project as well, for the opening song and the closing song with the Mbira there. So yeah, lovely being here.
Joy?
Hello, my name is Joy Wrolson. I have helped write the script as one of the team writing it, and I have worked as a dramaturg for the project, and I worked with the actors as a co-director with Gift.
Thank you, Joy. Virginia, is your sound working? No? Oh, not yet. Okay, well, I'll just say this is Virginia. She's a core team member of the Black Response, and she was the project coordinator. She made sure everything happened. So we're all super grateful to Virginia. There are some questions already in the chat, but I'll start with generally, do you guys want to talk a bit about the process of making the film? Yeah, Corey, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to get us started. Yeah, this was a really interesting process to kind of go from working with the script and the idea. Stephanie and I started talking about this project several years ago, and then the filmmaking process began in earnest last summer. And I was the director of the film portion of the project, and I worked really closely with Joy and Gift, who were amazing co-directors, working with the actors. And I think something that for me was really interesting about this piece is that it blended a lot of different techniques. We worked with kind of theater techniques to prepare the actors for the filming process. And then we brought them into the space at Hunter where we shot the film, and we were able to cover the project almost in a documentary style. So we were able to blend a lot of different techniques and creative approaches to create a piece that for me, I think feels like very warm, alive. It has a lot of realness, of course, blended with the real narratives that were provided in the research. I don't know, Joy, if you want to share a little bit. Joy was the dramaturg of the project and also one of the co-directors who worked most closely with the actors. Do you want to share a little bit about your role in that?
So I work in rehearsal I work very hard at creating an ensemble feeling between the actors, and and I kind of do it in a way that really removes hierarchies from the rehearsal process. And it's kind of a learning process if people haven't worked in this fashion before. And so, but I have always felt that removing that hierarchy between the director and the actors can create a very serendipitous, greater than the whole, or greater than the sum of its parts. And it is always been a pleasure to work with very talented actors. It's quite late where I'm at, so I'm hoping I'm making sense. I'll pass it off to Gift to talk as well.
Thank you, Joy. As a co-director, let me just pick it up on where you left off. I think for me, being Joy's student, interestingly enough, I also really work in the same approach. I'm an actor's director more than anything else. I enjoy working with actors to probe, ask questions, and prepare them to interpret text and character in such a way that at the end of the day, they own the story and they are sincere and honest to what is given in the text. And working with Joy and Corey in collaboration was an amazing process, because we could sort of center each other and help each other work with the actors in a way that would help us achieve a common goal. And Corey coined a term which I'm still sort of like it's stuck with me, about piercing the circle, because in essence we're working with the circle, which is something that's very close to me as well, you know, coming from a very African and traditional, you know, space in my theater training, and in my upbringing. The circle has a very significant space in the work that I do. And when we're working, particularly in a project that required us to get the performers, the actors, to sit in a circle of support, a circle that breaks hierarchy, a circle that allows a non-intrusive but very intimate conversation to happen. I think that was quite interesting to see how I could bring some of those elements into the space, but also the idea of bringing in the mbira music, which is very traditional and comes from a very oral culture where men or, you know, families sit in a circle around the fire, someone plays the mbira and sing and tell the story, and then it's a call and response. And I think that that's, for me, was very interesting to be able to bring those elements and see the man sit in this circle and really have a conversation that somewhat is very natural and just prompted and facilitated, but that is not necessarily in a particular order and fashion. And yeah, I think that was quite a highlight for me that I've taken away from the process.
There was a question in the chat. There are tons of questions, which is great. But I don't know if Corey, maybe you want to take this. How many days did it take to shoot? How many cameras? What was hard about making the film? What were the challenges?
Sure. Yeah, so we shot very, very quickly for a film of this length and sort of like emotional depth. We rehearsed for a week, which was led by Joy and Gift, which really laid a lot of the groundwork for us to be able to go through this shooting process at a pretty quick speed. And then we shot over the course of 3 days. We had 1 day of camera rehearsal and then 3 full days of working through the script. And we worked, as I said earlier, in a kind of documentary style. So we tried to have the actors be able to really, you know, have a lot of space with their performances and have the cameras kind of reacting more to what they're doing than having everything like very tightly choreographed to the camera, which I think lended a lot of natural sort of feeling to the film. And that process took 3 days, and we had two main camera operators and then a third camera that was sort of rotating between a group of students and a camera assistant who was also on set. I think that's another wonderful part. I love a lot about what Gift was saying about the kind of non-hierarchical sharing intimacy of making this film. I think that energy really emerged from the core of the script and radiated out through the entire production team. It was a very kind of horizontal, flat space where there was a lot of teaching, a lot of learning, a lot of people sharing their experiences and their expertise. And we were lucky enough to work at Hunter College, and we worked with several students from Hunter, and they got to have a lot of really wonderful hands-on learning experience on set. So it was really like a very community project from beginning to end. A lot of people pulling together to do this kind of very big thing in a really short amount of time, and it was just a super wonderful, beautiful experience.
Yeah, I think the screenings have also been really community oriented. It's been really nice to have everyone come together and like move the tables and chairs, and my mom made food. Like it's been sort of that sort of thing. There was another question in the Q&A. I don't know, maybe this is a Joy and Gift question. How did you choose these 8 men stories to highlight from all the people that were interviewed?
I can jump in on that, and Gift, I'm sure, will have a lot to add as well, because we had a set of these men, and we had I think we only had about 20 of the 41 interviews that we read, and we kind of highlighted, this is something that we want to talk about. This is an issue that we feel that we have enough congruence between them that we can create a conversation. And so our goal was that we wanted to create a conversation, to put these men in conversation. And we were looking at various ways of doing it. So we were looking at people who experienced something similar but had a different take on it, so that we could tell more of the story. And we ended up with 12 rather than 7, and the 8th person is kind of a conglomerate, but the 7 men that we ended up with, it was really hard because it felt like we were getting rid of I'm not going to say we were killing them, but it really felt like we were silencing their voices, silencing their stories as we did our final edits on the script. And we left it as we were talking about who is going to go, we finally said, Stephanie, who should go? Because at this point, I think Gift and I were so attached to these people or these people's stories that it was very difficult to narrow it down. One other aspect of it, and this was also a part of the process of distilling it, there were a few of the men that we wanted to include, but if we included them, we'd either have to hack off a lot of their story so that we could keep them anonymous, even though we had anonymized them. But there were bits of their stories that were too identifiable. People could potentially Google, people could do various things. So those were, I'd say that was our first criteria. Could we keep these men anonymous as we told their stories? And second was they had to be able to contribute an additional perspective to a common, or maybe not a common, but a issue that resonated with us. And I'm gonna stop talking now and let Gift talk.
Well, I think Joy has covered pretty much everything in as far as how difficult the process of sifting down the number to that 7. There was a question on who John is and where is Stephanie, and I just wanted to link that to this same topic. I think for me, the joy of co-authorship and the privilege of co-authoring a project like this is what I can take here as a highlight. How we could balance each other in terms of seeing perhaps where the common themes are, and trying to find maybe characters who sort of like represented the same themes and the same issues, or who could be sort of like a mirror to each other, and then trying to find between the 2 or 3 who then could be a more sort of like solid and overall representation of that particular category and from a particular theme or perspective. And then we started narrowing down the numbers until we landed with the 8, or the 7. And then the 8th, like Joy was saying, who is John? We felt at some point we could put together certain characters and certain men's stories and make them an amalgamation of different people, but then use that character as the voice and the facilitator who then holds space to facilitate the dialogue and make it conversational, and sort of like probe the other men and sort of like just keep the group together. And that's how we ended up with the character John, who ideally was not part of the narratives we had, although his text, his story, and the way he interacts with them is basically all from the narratives that we had, which we were using to sort of like create a non-linear but very conversational narrative.
I'm going to add that this script was originally for a performance versus a film. And when it was a performance rather than a film, we had created a narrator who was the voice, who was present on stage, but was who had some super ability to talk to each of the characters, who at that point, even though they were in dialogue, they were not in the same space and time. And that as a performance looked very different. I at one point had kind of hoped that it could be a performance done with some dance and movement. And so at that time, the voice, who then merged into John, was kind of both an MC of that and a commentator of what was going on in Boston or in Cambridge in the time, or what we were thinking about as directors and academics. And so John coming into the script when it turned into a film was, well, we really can't keep any of this voice anymore. We need to make him more real than he was in the original script.
Thank you, Joy. And yeah, Virginia, does your sound work?
Yes, thank you guys. I'm so sorry. My sound does work. Thank you.
I just wanted to check in with you. Would you mind sharing a bit about like the goals of the project from your perspective?
Yes, there are multiple goals, as you guys can see, uplifting, bringing up the voices of these men is one of like the biggest goal. Bringing awareness to the lives and the choices that sometimes we have to make, or men have to make, and families have to make, on housing and the lack of opportunities out there. But also, I think as the project and the and things started developing, and we started sort of um, narrowing down what our ultimate um, outcome our the film was going to look like. Another goal surfaced, which was that we wanted to also preserve where and archive the spaces that some of these conversations and dialogues took place. And with the space, we bring up also the Democracy Center, which is a place that no longer exists for the community, and we wanted to make sure that the space also looked like the spaces that we do mutual aid, where we provide support for people. And I think that one of the goal was also to make sure that there's also that process of every man that is in the group. It's sort of, you can see, they can see each other in a circle, and everybody is equal. Even John, when he was put sort of in the spotlight, he says, this matters to me. I care about this, and I think our goal is to create the same non-hierarchical that we worked with and we brought to the table. We wanted that to be felt within the group, and also to bring some of those to archive some of those spaces that are no longer available to us. So that's from my point of view. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Virginia. It looks like we're gonna go a little bit over time. I want to get to some of these other questions. There was a question about navigating sadness as people are hearing these stories. I'll speak for myself first. That I didn't experience fieldwork as sad, because these are real people and I spent time with them, months and months, and we had good times. We also had real struggles and some real fear, but for the most part, I hold the experiences that I had with these men as really valuable, and I would call like most of them friends at this point. So I don't think of their stories as sad. I think of their stories as real. And I think if I may speak, with them in mind and heart, that they would not want other people to struggle in the ways that they have struggled. But they are not sad people. They are resilient, and they use their experiences to inform their present. And so that's how I hold it. But I'm actually a bit curious from you guys. Do you experience, or did you experience in the process this affect of sadness? Maybe Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit. I think for me, I would also say I would not call the stories sad. I think that like the key quality for me of the project is intimacy. I think they're very vulnerable interior stories, and I think they're very emotional and deep, true stories, stories that really call forth a lot of feeling, that call forth a lot of you know, what's normally hidden from us being exposed and revealed. And I think the actors did an incredible job of bringing that intimacy, that vulnerability to the forefront. So I think, as Stephanie said, to me, they feel much more like very intimate stories that we normally are kind of shut away, especially for black men, excuse me, don't often get the space to share those parts of themselves, the parts that have struggled, the parts that have been lost, the parts that are, you know, they're not sure how things are going to come together. We don't always get to see that part of their experience, and we also don't always get to see men having that experience in community with each other. So I think the kind of placing of people's stories in connection and relationship and community, and having a space where this kind of interiority is not only kind of happening accidentally, but is happening purposefully, is being celebrated, is being held by all of the men in that space. For me, that's the kind of core element of the film and the project that really comes forward. And there is sadness in that. I think, like, having you know, being true and honest with the experiences that you've had. There, of course, are parts that have been painful, that have been challenging and difficult, but I think being able to bring that part forward is for me much more about this kind of space of intimacy. And I think it's also very important, I think, that we ended the story in the way that we did, that there's sort of you know, we came through these experiences, and the group sort of lands in this space where they're talking about, you know, what helped you survive, and what is the thing that helps you survive is these relationships that they built with each other, what they built with the people in the community, and that survival looks different for everybody. You know, it's not all perfect cherry roses, but there's some growth that happens, there's evolution, there's opening, and there's still this deep rooted connection with togetherness. So yeah, I think there is sadness, but I think that for me is not the core of the film. And I'd be really curious to hear what some of the other team members think about that. I see Virginia was nodding a lot. I'd love to hear from Virginia.
Thank you, Corey. I think for me, what comes to mind is a saying, healing is not linear, which means that I felt a lot of feelings, right, with the stories, and when I first read the script, when I first saw the final act, and however, it's like a very deep sense, like a very like a old friend talking to you about how they've overcome in their lives. So at the end of that road, there's also some happiness and some, there's also some um oh, you went through all of that and you're still here sort of battling life and going and moving forward. So there's a sense of um um being proud. I'm proud of all the men that are there. And I think that is, the apart from sadness, there's also all these other feelings that I felt going through this process, and bringing this to life, that I think honors the legacy that they've left us with their stories. And yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. I'm curious if others have anything else to say.
There was someone who asked, did the circle actually take place? I just want to be super clear that this circle did not take place. What we did in terms of process was, after selecting which narratives we were going to use, because my actual dissertation has these sort of snippets of people's stories that they co-wrote with me. In many cases, some of them had a lot of detail, and some of them were just like really like, here's this happened and then this happened, really chronological. And I would say that it's pretty arbitrary, in my experience, how we selected, because it could have been any of them, and it would have been just as moving. But we had to select, as Joey said, and so we just picked. And then the process of putting the script together was we all met and had a conversation about like how we would do it. I should say that as the sort of researcher, my researcher brain did not necessarily go theater as the first route. If I were the director of the film, I would have just had 25 men read the exact narratives. But it was really interesting in terms of process to like work with other creative people and the concept of taking bits of the stories and putting them in conversation with one another. I mean, it's not something, it's definitely something that can be done in sociology, but to do it in a sort of narrative account to like tell a story as though they're in conversation with one another was a really beautiful process, and it was a collective process and trying to think through yeah, what context they would be having this conversation in. And ultimately, I think it worked out really beautifully, and we were able to weave in a lot of um, uh like practices that come from social justice work, and all of the images that Virginia was speaking to, all of the images, all of the textured elements of the background, they're actually artifacts from the Democracy Center where a lot of these interviews actually took place, and so it felt like a real full circle experience to like have these things, to call them back in a way. Yeah, I want to go back to some of the other questions. Um, right. Where did the harmonica come from? Gift, do you want to speak to that? The harmonica did not happen in real life, so what was that?
Well, before gift goes, if it's okay for me to interrupt, I brought the harmonica because so um as I was as part of my work, and I'm sorry, I completely took it over, Gift. But as part of my work, I was to bring the oh now I'm in the word, what the stage, like stuff for the stage and things for the actors to wear, so the costumes and things like that. And if you know me, I will grab stuff because I think I gravitate towards things, and I brought the harmonica for absolutely no reason. I just brought it because I thought it was a cool thing to bring, and I brought a bunch of things that I thought were cool to bring. And Corey and Joy and Gift looked at me like, "What is all that?" And the first night we chose the costumes for the actors, and then I just had a bunch of leftover things that I had brought. And I remember Corey said to me, "We're gonna use it all." And so we did. We found a use for all, including the harmonica, which turned out to be had its own space within the film, which was really funny. So yeah, I don't know if Gif or Corey, you want to say some more?
I actually I just want to shout out. I think I saw Sean in the room. I think I also saw Bill in the room. I don't know who else I did see. Now that you brought the harmonica, and I think Solo, who was playing Eric, he actually ended up bringing his own harmonica for when we did the filming, because he, for some strange reason, things just aligned. He actually plays one, he's actually making music, and the song we actually used in the film is his own composition. So he actually ended up bringing his own harmonica, which is the one that we used when we were filming. So we ended up having two, the one that Virginia brought and the one that Solo brought. And I think it was such a beautiful sort of like, you know, just stars aligning, and how some of the actors were really beginning to connect with the characters in such a way that they were taking full ownership, and they were so sincere and honest to share parts of their own lived experiences and bring them and craft them into the lives of the characters. So yeah, working with the actors, and you know, touching on that issue of sadness that, you know, came up earlier. I think for me, it was quite interesting to see how in the midst of all these challenges, there is this overarching theme of Ubuntu and people being interconnected and finding a support structure, whether it's from friends or immediate family or, you know, strangers that end up becoming family and sort of like a support system, but also the resilience of the individuals and their very positive outlook on life, regardless of their, you know, their situation. And that, I think that's the role of music, particularly for this one character, and how that music carried him through difficult, you know, times, and how that music became a go-to space, and it helped him create a safe space for him. And yeah, we ended up enjoying a lot of music during rehearsals, which was a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Gift. I think I saw Sean raise his hand, so I just want to shout you out, Sean. Do you want to say a few words? Maybe you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, no, I didn't know how to work the Zoom. I didn't know the raise hand would be hey. I was just waving because it's hey. So yeah, hey everyone. And yeah, hopefully Corey can answer my question because I'm like, there's so much footage to edit. And I'm like, oh, there's that. Oh, how did she, you know? So hey guys, all right, I'm gonna you again.
Hi, Sean. So nice to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the other performers who I think are maybe in the room with us as well. Yes, there was an incredible amount of footage. There's 3 cameras worth of footage and 3 days worth of footage, and it's very complex to shoot. It's very complex to shoot a multi-camera project in the way that we did, and it's also really complicated to edit a multi-camera piece. So there's a lot of choices to make, and I think editing is a really interesting experience because so much of it is about just having a feeling of it. You kind of have to just be in the footage every day, you know, all the time, which I was. This project really became my life for the last like 9 months. And especially in the editing phase, I was doing it almost like 24/7. So it's really, you know, you start to dream about it. You start to like, when you close your eyes, you see the premiere timelines, you see like all of that stuff. And yeah, but it's just, I think you just have to become extremely intimate with the footage. You kind of just make that relationship, and you know, you just do many iterations of it. Like, this is, you know, definitely not the first version of the film that came out. It still had many things to go. And it's kind of a process of like, you have this clay that you're putting together, and then every version you're refining, you're taking things away, you're kind of putting pieces here and putting pieces there. And so it just yeah, just it's part intuition, it's part being extremely patient, and part step and living inside your computer for a long time and not having any friends. Not going anywhere. But it's great. It was a beautiful process. It was very beautiful. I learned so much as a director working on this project. I learned so much about collaboration. I learned so much about how to edit this kind of piece. It's been hugely educational, very wonderful. It's like really profoundly touched my life and changed the way that I'm gonna make projects in the future. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Thank
Um,
you, Corey.
I wanted to speak to some of the other questions about housing. So one person asked during the research, was any indication found as to why men are excluded from certain resources and housing? So the law doesn't explicitly exclude Black men. It's a sort of de facto result of the intersection, the combination of policies and how they operate. We know that there's, I'll try to be brief, as I did write like 400 pages on this subject. But in general, there's a housing crisis, both, I mean, in the market. there's a crisis of supply, there's a crisis of affordability. And so there just isn't enough housing anyway. And so when there is this manufactured crisis in housing, and something as crucial as housing, what ends up happening is that there's this false sense that we have to be selective of who gets access. And in the case of housing, especially government subsidized housing, what has been found historically, and what I have found, is in prioritizing who is deserving of the limited resources we have. Able-bodied men are not the ones. And specifically able-bodied Black men are not the ones, in that they're socially constructed as really deviant or criminal. And what I think is really important about these stories, it shows like how they become so visibly constructed as these sort of negative social constructions, I'll say it like that. And you can see how over time, the visibility that they experience from being so publicly seen, as opposed to being like sheltered in every sense of the word, it makes them really vulnerable in this way. And it's really specifically low-income Black men are constructed as social as politically very weak. These are already low-income people, so they're not property owners. In a lot of cases, because of their housing status, they're not full residents. In some cases, are not even eligible to vote as a resident of a municipality. And so, what reason do politicians, do legislators have to cater to the needs of this population? And back to the sort of insecurity question, the supply question is really challenging in terms of government housing resources, especially now when we're in this like period of austerity, when they're sort of shrinking down. And in Cambridge, we're a sanctuary city, so government funding has been taken away from housing and other social programs. But what that generally means, even outside of these like extraordinary circumstances, what that tends to mean is that the already limited resources are going towards more favorably constructed, socially constructed populations, like families with children, the disabled, the elderly. And so these people are seen as sort of deserving because they like women, they've socially fulfilled their reproductive obligations, right? And so they are deserving of it because they're going to raise children who are going to be laborers, they're going to work, and they're going to be productive workers and good citizens. And like disabled people, it's no fault of their own, so they're deserving because society ought to be good to them. The elderly they've fulfilled their laborious capacity, and therefore they are deserving. But these Black men, they need this sort of leg up. They need a stepping stool in order to become secure. And and so that is the sort of like needing support makes them unworthy of support. It's sort of this conundrum that legislators and people who advocate for housing justice find themselves in. And because of the wording of policies around race, especially now in these times, it's seen as discriminatory to target policies and programs that are government funded to any particular population, even if they're the ones in need. And so I'll pause there. There is a whole dissertation, and anyone who's registered will receive a link if you're interested in learning more. There's this other question about what can we do about it? Well, what I'm hoping that we can do about it is, write to your legislators and say that we need to support low-income African descended men. We need to prioritize supporting formerly incarcerated folks and other housing insecure folks. But in Cambridge in particular, there are two things that we're actually actively working on. We have a small victory towards the $1 million, which is not very much, went towards the creation of a municipal voucher program. But if you live in Cambridge or wherever you live, write to your legislators and ask them to allocate more funding to city funded voucher programs that can expand their range of eligibility. Typically, municipal voucher programs can house a greater range of people, including like undocumented people, mixed status families, the people who are currently being excluded, but especially African descended men. Another issue that we're championing, and we encourage you all to get involved, is in Cambridge, we've created the Cambridge Community Land Trust, the CLT, and we encourage people to support the CLT. We're actively bringing in Black men to like shape the program. It's an opportunity to rent as well as long-term to be able to purchase in a deed restricted context, so that it's property that somebody can own and live in and remain permanently affordable. And so we are asking people to support these two very specific things. I'm happy to talk more about housing, but that's not the reason why we're here. Right. There's this question about what should we do with this film after? Is it going to be widely available to stream? We don't have an answer to that, but I'm curious to hear what you think, Corey.
Yeah, we're talking about it. Well, I think that it's a beautiful film, and like part of my desire is to continue to see it developed and screened in other places. The participants and the setting of the film it's Cambridge. It's a Cambridge story, and we've done a lot of work to share that story in that community. The film was also filmed in New York. We'd love to have it come to New York and to have a series of screenings here. We'd love to have it go to South Africa, where Gift is based, to go to London, where Stephanie is based. I think one of the most amazing qualities of this piece is that in its specificity, in its like incredible like being deeply rooted in a community, it kind of pierces beyond that specificity into a story that really relates to a lot of people. I think that's a really interesting thing that can happen, is that the sort of intimacy, the poignancy, the sort of precision of the stories then kind of open up to become something that really speaks to many different communities that have been touched by these same issues in a variety of ways. So I think there's a potential for the film to go a lot of places, to screen in festivals, to be shown in educational settings. Is, I think, part of our desire to see this film, be able to be shown in spaces that are going to further the conversation, going to further the work that Stephanie and other activist partners are doing. So I think it has a long life ahead of itself, and I'm looking forward to seeing us after we have a breather, after we get, finishing this marathon to get to this very moment. I think we'll regroup and we'll talk about where it can continue to go to in the future.
I just want to say that if it's available online, just keep looking into the Black Response YouTube channel and it will be there if it's going online. Just want to say that. Thank
you. There was another question about the reparations event that's going to be taking place. So Nancy, if you're still here, just send us an email. We'd be happy to connect with you about that. Can members of the panel see a way for reparations to get able-bodied Black men who were, what do you all think? What role does reparations, or the conversation around reparations, play in the justice and getting justice for these men?
Definitely. I'm actually curious to hear what you think about this. I feel like part of what I understand of the work that you're doing is maybe not directly related to reparations, but wanting to expand the knowledge of this story, wanting to sort of shape policy, shape, what is happening in our society to kind of remedy this. And I'm curious to hear what your hope for it is.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation around reparations is a bit tricky for me. I don't study reparations. And I'm also not African American, and I do see the reparations conversation as in the US to be about African Americans. In terms of the role that I think reparations could play in getting justice, I've heard a lot of people talk about property as justice. I hope that that people get property. I hope that they get housing security. Um, I would be curious to have that conversation with Black men and hear what they have to say about this. I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to speak to this issue, if I'm honest. Yeah, there's another person who said there was another person who said that they lived in Worcester. Worcester's another city in Massachusetts, and that they've experienced a lot of their Black male friends who passed away too soon. And a lot of them also experience a lot of housing instability and housing transients. Yeah, just to go back to what Corey was saying, yes, this is a story. These stories all took place in Cambridge, but I did talk to men in other cities across down the East Coast, I would say, and what I found is that these stories really resonated. That none of this was isolated to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I almost thought of it as we expect these stories to take place in New York and Philadelphia and these like larger metropolitan cities. And what was not curious but important was that it was taking place in this affluent city where Harvard University is. And I didn't change that part of Xavion's story. He did sleep in MIT classrooms, and it was interesting for him to take me to how he got into the buildings because I was like, "How did you do this?" And he was like, "Let's go." So we broke into MIT buildings at night, and he showed me where he slept and where he got free food. So all of this is happening in one of the most affluent cities in the world. And so I think that really that showed me that this isn't isolated to this one place. Looking at the housing landscape, the injustice of housing in this landscape was particular, but it was not unique. And it's I think that's what resonates with people, that these stories are so resonant. They're everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, someone said that this film feels very real, like a documentary. A stage production would have been a totally different impact. I I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Joy, I mean, when we first had this conversation.
When, well, there's a couple of things that we were going to do with the staged production. It was that we were going to perform it in the community that produced it, and to have audience response through surveys or interacting. So there's that aspect of applied theater in that, and the immediacy of being in the same space as you tell stories and perform, and the liveness of it. It's something that I'm very committed to creating. And yes, it's a very different, it would have been a very different thing. It wouldn't have felt, I think it would have had documentary verbatim theater feel to it, but the vulnerability and intimacy, I don't know if it would be increased, because even though you have that liveness and the connection, but you don't have the ability to zoom in on someone's face. So there's that aspect of it. And I really feel like I really was envisioning a very physical dance performance at times. And I may want to go back to that first script and see what aspects of dance and movement and how we can manipulate the space and time so that you can have these men speaking separately as they were in an interview, but have their bodies in conversation with each other. And so there's something in me that wants to go back to the production, the performance, but I'm really loving the film. And as I said, that sense of vulnerability and intimacy would be evoked differently, because you don't have that possibility of zooming so close in or zooming in on hands. I really liked a lot of, that hand movement and how we focused on somebody's mic at a certain time, and some of that is, yes, reproducible or in a different way in a staged version, but the other thing is a stage director and stage actors can't control the audience's gaze. And that's something that is very true in film. You have absolute control of where the audience is going to look. And so I'll just leave it at that. It would be a very different thing. And I've had strong ideas about what a live performance would look like. And then I go back and I'm like, oh, but this. So, and
I think another thing about it for me, like I was really looking forward to a live version, but what's happened for me is that I've been able to share the film with my research participants. Some of them have come to the screening, some of them have asked for the link. And so I've been able to do that. And one person, the character of Eric, he couldn't be able to watch it with everybody. And if it was live theater, I don't think he'd be able to digest it. Giving him the link meant that he could like stop it and like process, which is something that he's like now slower to do and needs time. And so now he's able to actually process the film, the stories, and see himself in these conversations. And I think it's had a different impact on this population. And I think I began my introduction by saying that I was inspired by Linda Tuhiwa Smith, but I'm also inspired by Marx in the concept of alienation. And it's a really long and complex thing to explain, but I didn't want to be extractive and harmful in the way that I was conducting the research. And something I committed to in doing the research was giving it back. And I want to say that my research participants held me accountable. They wanted copies of everything. They wanted to see everything. They read everything and edited everything down, had me read things to them. And I think in taking their own stories and doing that process with their own stories a lot of them felt really confident and comfortable with what we were doing together. Digesting like the 400-page document that I produced was probably not out of everybody's depth, but it would be a lot of work for many people, like many people who were not my research participants. And so I think putting it together in this form allowed people to like take an hour of their day to see the entire thing together. That was a more digestible, a non-alien form, and non-alienating form to give the stories back to the community. And so I think it was I'm really grateful that I roped you guys into doing this project with me and that we were able to do it for the community. And it's been a community making process throughout. Like we all became really close and love working with each other. And it was a community um, um, owned project, the way that people came together and were like handing out flyers and moving tables and chairs and cooking food. And so I'm really happy that we've been able um, to to use research in this way that is not the typical way that an, a doctoral dissertation is is enjoyed. I'll say it like that. It's a different genre of a thing. And so I'm really like I have so much gratitude for all of you for participating in it and everyone who came today and all of the previous screenings, the obviously the all of the actors and the crew members who made this happen and all of the research participants who shared their stories with us. And I think this is a good place to pause for tonight. um, I, we're really looking forward to sharing the story even more. So if you're interested in maybe hosting a screening or if you want to hear more about the project, just send us an email. And we'll be sending out an email with links to numerous things, how to support the Cambridge Community Land Trust, a quick survey about the film and the event. If you want to read the entire dissertation, there'll be a link to that too if you're interested. And if you want to support this project and the Black response, all of that will go out in an email. But thank you all so much. We're really happy that we were able to do this together tonight. I want to just like check in with each of you. Do you want to say a final something? Corey?
Yeah, I feel so much gratitude to everybody who participated in the project. All the people who are here on the panel with me are amazing collaborators, and yeah, we really formed family together and have done an incredible you know, it's really, really, really hard to make a film, and it is amazing that we did it, and it's amazing the time frame in which we did it. There's just so much that's extraordinary about you know, all the things that happened behind the scenes. So I'm so grateful to have gotten to go through this process with you all. I'm extremely grateful to the performers who gave, you know, they opened up their hearts and their spirits to us and really were able to bring forward the stories of these men in a beautiful, compassionate ways. And I'm incredibly grateful to the crew, to our director of photography, Sean Hanley, and our wonderful second camera operator, Suze Murray Sadler, and all of the amazing crew members that have helped with the project. Thank you, everybody. And looking forward to more screenings. Excited for our New York run in the future.
Yeah. Joy?
I want to also shout out to Bill, Chuk, and Sean for being here tonight. And I think of that 10 days or however many days it was as incredibly tiring, but also incredibly rewarding as far as just the contribution of not only talent, but investing in these men's stories that the whole cast and crew put in. and how important it felt to me that that it happened, and that yes, I'll just say I'm grateful, humbled, and filled by the sense of community that was created, and care and that was came in. So I'll also want to thank Virginia and Andy for all the behind the scenes work that was done both prior and during, and the amount of work that made our work easier. And so yes. And
How about you,
I'll
Gift?
leave it at that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I share the same sentiments with all the team members who've spoken before. It just feels like home again. Can't wait for our next gathering in the same space. But also just to really appreciate all the participants, people who came through for this, screening, and people who've engaged us, all the comments, and, all the positive, reflections and everything. There's such a universal thing about this film that I'm looking forward to a South African screening and the nature of the conversation that is going to come out of it. I really, really, really can't wait for when that happens, because I think the story is so universal, and it is quite, I think it's something that came up in our rehearsals, that the story is bigger than all of us. And this is something about it it needs to be told, it needs to be heard, and conversations need to be had around the issues that it raises. So very grateful to have been a part of such important work. Thank you so much.
Virginia.
Oh my gosh. When Stephanie told me we're gonna do a movie and you're going to do and you will be the one doing the administrative work for it. I was like, Stephanie, I've never done a movie. And here we are. I'm really grateful for being part of this team, for everybody. Every time I said, you guys, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, and everybody just said, you are doing the right thing. You are, and I was able to explore this whole new world that at the end came really easy and really nice, because everybody was so knowledgeable in their field, and so great, and also open to ideas. I was able to tell Corey stuff. I was able to tell Joy stuff, and Gift and Stephanie, and everybody just listened, and we all listened to each other, and they were able to tell me stuff, and we worked really well, and I'm just very grateful for that. And yeah, I would do it again. Just really, really grateful to this team for all the long hours that you bared with me while I went line by line, little by little, every hour of the day, and for all the actors, the rehearsals, the auditions. It was just really fun, a fun drive. And I'm just really grateful for it. Thank you so much. And for all the people that have come out. This is I knew that we were doing something great, but also the community has shown up. We've gotten a lot of people coming up to the screenings. People are talking about it. And I'm just really grateful that it's reaching out, because we can make this, right? We did it, but are we reaching the people that we want to reach? And I think we've made that. I want to like congratulate everybody that is part of this group, because and that did this, because we are making a difference, and for me that is the best. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys. And thank you to all of our funders. Yeah, this is great. And see you at the next screening. Bye.